Well, hello, my beautiful ones. How are you today? Are you guys excited? Are you getting in the mood? It's time to relax. You've had a long day. Let's just sit back and delve into In the Company of Witches. Hope you're by your fire, sitting with your cup of beverage, and in your warm blankie. So here we go. Chapter 21. I walked over to the woman hidden in the shadow of the trees. I almost lost sight of her when yet another cloud racing across the sky cut off the brilliance of the sun. I'm sorry if I startled you. I should have introduced myself when you came by the orchard the other day. I apologize for my rudeness. Oh, there's no need. The circumstances weren't the best. The muscles flexed in her jaw. And I'm afraid my husband is particularly gifted at taking any set of criticism and making them worse. I waited, not sure how to respond. I've made you uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Please don't apologize. You must be wondering why I've tracked you down. I blinked in surprise. Don't worry, I haven't been following you. I was just at the gift shop. She looked over at Charm Treasures. I was chatting with the clerk. She is quite the fan of the Warren women. I'm starting to realize that. Anyway, she told me you had just stopped in, and I saw you talking to Ben. She looked down at her purse. But, in all honesty, I have been hoping I would run into you. You must know I live at the B&B. You could have stopped by any time. She stiffened and retreated deeper in the shadow. I couldn't do that. Rip might find out. Would you like to go somewhere more private to talk? No, that won't be necessary. She opened the latch on her handbag. This won't take long. She pulled out a faded envelope. I was hoping you could give this to Rip's brother. He does the lawn work for the town. It wouldn't be difficult to find him. I know John, I said, not yet reaching to take the envelope from her. Why did you need me to give it to him? Why not give it to him yourself? I'm taking a risk by talking to you. If Rip found out I went to see John, she shook her head. I need a little more time. When things are settled, I'll talk to John myself. Apologize for not getting this to him sooner. I took the letter from her. I wasn't surprised to see it addressed to John Graves. I was, however, quite shocked to see who it was from. Constance. My gaze snapped back up to hers. She held up a hand as though to hold me off. I know. How old is this letter? Several years. Why do you have it? Rip stole it. Probably took it right out from her mailbox. She would have thought the mail carrier had delivered it. I suddenly remembered that John had said about Dog bringing him other people's mail. Maybe the crow had been trying to tell John about this letter. A messenger for the dead indeed. I brought myself back to the moment. Your husband told me he didn't see much of Constance. My husband is a liar, Miss Warren. It comes as easily to him as breathing. He doesn't even think his lies through. He visited his sister several times a year, trying to convince her to give him the Graves house. I'm sure he wasn't nice about it either. My guess is every visit he paid hardened her heart against him a little more. But the letter? I wouldn't exactly be in I'm sorry, it wouldn't exactly be in his interest to have John and Constance making amends, would it? Is that what this is? Constance trying to make amends? I shouldn't say. The letter was meant to be private, a private communication between Constance and her brother. I am ashamed for having looked at it myself. Her cheeks reddened. Suffice to say, Rip used what was in that letter to keep John angry at his sister. But it was all out of context. Constance was trying to make things right for once. I can't believe this, I said, staring at the envelope. You can't begin to understand how devious my husband is. That day when you came to the orchard, he already knew the police thought Constance's death was suspicious. He already knew the police thought Constance's death was suspicious. I couldn't say I was shocked. I already knew he had been lying. He set you up. He wanted you to question whether John had something to do with his sister's death. And you're not the only one. He planned to use the letter to convince the police John had a motive to kill his sister. I frowned. What more could Constance have possibly done to John aside from cutting him out of the will? If he could make it seem like John had killed Constance, that was one less person he'd have to fight for the estate. Not that he's going to get one brick of that house. Constance would have made sure of that. Of course, Rip's ridiculous plan fell apart when he heard John's alibi. What alibi? He was in the military for a while with several members of the Evan Falls police force. They were drinking together that night. Not that anyone would have believed John could be capable of such an act. Rip never understood his brother, what it meant to be a good man. It's hard to believe Rip would want people to think John was guilty just to further his own aims. Despite his feelings for his brother, that would be mean. He didn't care if the real killer was found out or not. As I said the words, I realized it could mean something much worse. Maybe Rip wasn't concerned with finding the real murderer because he already knew who the killer was. I locked gazes with Maureen. I needed to ask her something, and I wanted to see her reaction when I did. Rip said you're his alibi. I need to know the truth. Was he home with you the night of the murder? I'll tell you what I told the police, she said, holding my gaze steady. He was when I went to bed at 8 o'clock with a sleeping pill. A bitter gust of wind swirled around us. Ms. Warren, I know your family has a reputation for helping people in the unusual circumstances, so I'm trusting you to deliver that letter. John deserves to know what is in it, even if it is too late for him to do anything about it. I will never forgive myself for not getting it to him sooner. It sounds like you care about John a lot. She gave me an unpleasant smile. I didn't take it didn't take long after my wedding for me to realize I had chosen the wrong man. She turned to leave, but I couldn't let that happen. Not yet. Maureen, she raised her eyebrow. You must know the police are looking at my aunt for as a potential suspect. I realize I can't expect you to believe Nora is innocent based on my words, but I'm giving it to you anyway. So, if there's anything you know that could help her, I would be so grateful if you shared it with me. Any details that's been bothering you. Anything strange about your husband's behavior. Maureen sighed, almost as though she had been waiting to be asked. There is one thing. She stepped in closer. The past few days, Rip has been spending a lot of time on the phone. That's not so unusual, but he's been secretive about it. I was worried he might have picked up on what I've been doing. She shot me a quick look, realizing she had said more than she'd intended. Never mind all that. It's of no importance to you. The point is, I was suspicious, so I waited until he was distracted, and then I looked at the caller list. The same unlisted number kept coming up. Yesterday, Rip was in the shower, and the number called again, so I answered it. My heartbeat quickened. As a young woman was on the other end, a young woman was on the other end, but it's not what you think, she added quickly. You see, all Gray's family members have a particular lilt to their voice. So even though I've only met her a handful of times, I am almost certain about who it was. I gripped the letter in my hand. It was his niece, Liz Coleman, Mary's daughter. I paused, then shook my head. Their family? Maybe they reconnected over Constance's death. Maureen's eyes narrowed. Have you not been listening to a word I've said? My husband is not the type of man who reconnects with family over the passing of a loved one. No, Miss Warren, I don't know what they're they've been talking about, but it's not a reunion. I nodded. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. I didn't know what it meant, but it somehow felt like an important piece to the puzzle. Don't thank me. Just deliver that letter. And again, don't tell John where you got it. I can't have things blowing up just yet. I need more time. Rip needs to believe I'm still on his side. Maureen turned again, and this time I didn't stop her. I stared at the letter in my hand. I wanted so badly to read it. I didn't believe John was a killer, but Maureen had said quite clearly this letter contained a motive beyond being cut out of the estate. I needed to know what that was, even if John did have a rock solid alibi. But too many people had already read this letter. It would be wrong to add myself to that list. Then again, this wasn't just about Constance Graves' family. It was about mine, too. I waved the envelope in the air, debating what to do. Then I noticed a strange smell coming from it. I brought it carefully to my nose. It was the same scent from the soap in the gift shop. But this time, I knew what it was. I knew what it was. I had I had to get home. I stuffed the letter in my bag. I would give it to John tomorrow. That meant, of course, I would have all night to agonize about whether or not I should read it. But none of that was important right now. I had to talk to Nora. She had a whole lot of explaining to do.